down to verse 48, brother, and go ahead.
I am that bread of
So
life.
he told you he is that bread of life. Because everything that we dealing with the feast days, points straight to Jesus. And we're going to show you that. Go ahead and read.
Your fathers did eat manna in the wilderness and are dead.
Uh-huh.
This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die.
Go ahead.
I am the living bread which came down from heaven. And if any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever.
Uh-huh.
And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world.
So the Lord said he is that bread of life. Skip on down and pick it up at verse 63, because we're going to show you what this bread really is. Skip on down to verse 63 and go ahead.
It is the spirit that quickeneth,
Uh-huh.
the flesh profited nothing.
Uh-huh.
The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit, and they are life.
And that's what the Lord wants you to eat. He wants you to eat the unleavened bread of truth, of sincerity and truth. And what is that truth? He said it's the spirit that quickeneth. The flesh profit nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. That's what the Lord wants you to eat, because this is the reason why we keep these feasts, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, because it points toward straight to Jesus. Let's go to back to Leviticus, the 9th chapter. We're just going through these feasts. Leviticus, the 9th chapter. And we're going to pick it up. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, I'm sorry. Leviticus, the 23rd chapter, and we're going to pick it up at the 9th verse. Okay, when you get it, go ahead.
And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying,
Uh-huh.
Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them,
Go ahead.
When ye be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest unto the priest.
Uh-huh.
And he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord, to be accepted for you. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it.
Now, he said, when you come into the land, that's Leviticus 23 and 9. Did you start at 9?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He said, so speak unto the children, when you come into the land, and when you reap the harvest, you shall take a sheaf of your first fruits of your harvest unto the priest. So we're going to show you what all these feast days means, okay? This is the Feast of Weeks, but we're going to show you that. Go ahead and read.
And he shall wave the sheaf before the Lord to be accepted for you.
Uh-huh.
On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And ye shall offer that day when you wave the sheaf and he lamb without blemish of the first year for a burnt offering unto the Lord.
Uh-huh.
And the meat offering thereof should be 2/10 deals of fine flour mingled with oil.
Go ahead.
An offering made by fire unto the Lord for a sweet savor.
Uh-huh.
And the drink offering thereof should be of wine, the fourth part of an hin.
So this is when the Lord is instituting his day of Pentecost, or what the new book called Pentecost, but the old book called it the Feast of Harvest or the Feast of Weeks. Go ahead and read. Or the Feast of the First Fruits. Go ahead and read.
And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the same self day that ye brought forth an offering unto your God.
Uh-huh.
It should be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings.
Go ahead. Now he said it's going to be done forever. Go ahead and read.
And ye should count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath,
Uh-huh.
from the day that ye brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete.
So he said you're going to count, you're going to count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath. Okay, go ahead and read. He said, the priest shall wave it, and 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. So 7 times 7 is 49, and the morrow after the Sabbath, which makes 1, will make it 50, and that's all Pentecost means is 50. It don't mean nothing else but 50, because that's the 50th day from the Passover. Because he said the priest shall wave it. Go ahead and read.
Even until the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days.
So he see how he said, even unto tomorrow after the 7th Sabbath shall be 50 days, and it shall be complete. Go ahead and read.
And ye shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord.
Uh-huh.
Ye shall bring out of your habitation 2 wave loaves of 2
Now,
tenths deal.
let's turn on over to Proverbs, the 3rd chapter, because this is called the Pentecost, or the Feast of Pentecost, or the Feast of Weeks, or the Feast of the First Fruits. And we're going to show you what that means. Or some people call it the Feast of Harvest. Let's go to Proverbs, the 3rd chapter, and we're going to pick it up at verse 9. Okay, go ahead.
Honor the Lord with thy substance,
Uh-huh.
and with the first fruits of all thy increase.
See what he said? You honor the Lord with your substance and with the first fruits of all your increase. Go ahead and read.
So shall thy barns be filled with plenty,
Uh-huh.
and thy presses shall burst out with new wine.
And that's why he told you to honor the Lord with your first fruits. Did you finish that?
Yes, sir.
Now let's go on over to 1 Corinthians, the 15th chapter, and let's show you who the first fruits represent. 1 Corinthians 15, and we're going to pick it up at verse 12. Okay, when you get it, read it.
Now, if Christ be preached that he rose from the dead, how say some among you that there is no resurrection of the dead?
Go ahead.
But if there be no resurrection of the dead, then is Christ not risen? And if Christ be not risen, then is our preaching vain, and your faith is also vain.
And that's what's happening, because if we preach that Christ is not risen, then everything that we talking about is all for nothing. So, but we know that he has risen. Skip on down to verse 20, brother, and go ahead.
But now is Christ risen from the dead and become the first fruits of them that
So
slept.
now is Christ risen from the dead and became the first fruits of them that slept. I want you to keep on reading.
For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead.
So now that Christ has risen from the dead, he became the first fruits of them that slept. What does first fruit mean? That means he was the first one that came alive from the dead, and we're going to show you that further. Let's go to St. John, the 20th chapter. We're going to show you that. St. John, the 20th chapter. St. John 20, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. St. John 20 and 1, because we're going to show you when Jesus came up out the grave, he became the first fruits. But even he had to be offered to the Father before anybody could touch it. St. John, the 20th chapter, and we're going to pick it up at verse 1. When you get it, read it.
The first day of the week cometh Mary Magdalene early, when it was yet dark, into the sepulchre.
Go ahead.
And seeth the stone taken away from the sepulchre. Then she runneth, and cometh to Simon Peter, and to the other disciples whom Jesus loved, and said unto them, They have taken away the Lord out of the sepulchre, and we know not where they have laid him.
Now I want you to skip on down to verse 11 and go ahead.
But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain.
Go ahead.
And they said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She said unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him. And when she had thus said, she turned herself back and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus.
So she didn't even know that this was the Lord right here. Okay, because the Lord had went into the grave, he died, he went in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights, and then he resurrected. But nobody could touch him because he had to go and be a wave offering before the Lord, before the Father. Go ahead and read.
Jesus said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Who seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, said unto him, Sir, if thou have borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away.
Go ahead.
Jesus said unto her, Mary. She turned herself and said unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. Jesus said unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God.
So when Jesus said unto her, he called her name, he said, Mary. She turned and said unto him, Rabboni, which means master. And he said, Touch me not, because I have not yet went up ascended to my Father, but go to your brethren and my brethren and say, hey, I go to my God and I go to your God. Because the reason why she could not touch him, because he had to be the first fruits, and he had to go and be the wave offering first up in heaven. The Lord had to accept him. The Father had to accept him. And then when he got accepted, you can read this a little later on your own, he came back down and he had all his disciples to touch him and to feel him. Because he was the first fruits and he represents the first fruits. And that is what we call the Feast of Weeks, sisters and brothers, or the Feast of the Harvest, or the Feast of the First Fruits. Let's go on over to Acts the 2nd chapter, and we're going to show you that even after Jesus had came and went back up to heaven and the disciples continued to keep the feast. Let's go to Acts the 2nd chapter and pick it up at verse 1. Okay, go ahead.
And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, they were all with one accord in one place.
Go ahead.
And suddenly there came a sound from heaven, as of a rushing mighty wind.
Now this is the day of Pentecost now. This is the day of the Feast of Weeks now. This is the 50th day from the Passover. Go ahead and read.
And filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared unto them cloven tongues like as a fire,